Welcome to the High Performance Interviews. Today I am joined by Paul Neustrom from Minnesota. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, Lucy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's fantastic to see you, I have to say. Now, I'm going to do a little introduction for Paul. Paul has been an author for 6 years. He is also a speaker and a marketing expert, and he's the founder of Publish, Speak, Prosper. He's an award-winning and best-selling author, and Paul helps others to write compelling content that really resonates and inspires. And through the authority he's built, he makes best-selling authors and then promotes them as well. So, Paul, I'm going to ask you a bit about your background first, because the marketing side, I think, came to start with. Is that correct?
It did. I started very young and I attended the University of Kansas in Lawrence, which is kind of recognized as the Harvard of the Plains for publishing and for journalism. And I got so sick and fed up with all the theory that I quit my junior year. And we had a publishing venture that I speak about in my book called Death of a Yellow Page Salesman. And that kind of identifies my journey as I ended up spending almost 40 years in marketing and advertising, but 30 of that was selling yellow pages. And that's the ads in the back of the phone book. But I was more a trainer where I taught high performance techniques to my salespeople of how to do like a one call close with a high ticket sale and how to do things in not a convincing way or a slick or a sleazy, like sales tactic, but how you can genuinely bond with your potential clients in a way that helps them to achieve the results that they're really looking for. So
Ooh.
now I love teaching, through books and through speaking of really how you can achieve the highest level by simply doing a few key things. And I'm excited to talk about that with you today, Lucy.
Okay, well, I'm excited to hear all about it, Paul. So that's fantastic. So when did you transition out of the yellow pages, that, and then go on to the speaking and the author and the writing and then the teaching and that side of things? What was the
Well,
catalyst?
back in 2015, I've got the inspiration to actually write a book. And I had visited the Holy Lands and I was at Jacob's Well. And I write this in the book because it's the inspiration for Death of a Yellow Page Salesman. And I was visiting all these sites and just really taking it in. And it's the first time I'd ever been to Israel and Samaria and all the different places. And we went to like 60 or 70 places. And it was just overwhelming as far as the history and all of the stories and everything. But the one that really spoke to me at the time was at Jacob's Well. And we were sitting below the church in the well and tasting the water was sweet, and I was thinking, man, this really goes back a long ways. And just kind of taking it in, that wasn't that far where they say Jesus lived. And it was the longest recorded conversation in the Bible with the woman at the well. But when I went upstairs, I saw this picture on the iconostas, and it was a picture of Jesus sitting in a fountain, and water was pouring out of this fountain. And he was young, he was like maybe 8 or 9 years old. And these three words came to me that were so strong. And I believe that God speaks to us in whatever way or however you recognize God, as far as universal power or manifesting or whatever. But for me, it was my Lord was speaking to me. It was three words: filled to overflowing. And so from that is in a couple months, I was in a position where I was inspired to write a book, and it was filled to overflowing. And my publisher was like, Paul, is this a marketing book or is it an inspiration book? And I said, it's both. And they said, it can't be. And I said, well, it is. I'm paying you to publish it. So publish it. And now it's been picked up by a small college to use in marketing for their young entrepreneurs class. And so I'm going to go speak in front of the entire student body, which is 650 people. And I'm talking about the principles of how your business and your life can become filled to overflowing with abundance, with achievement, with all the things that if you just do a few simple things, it can make all the difference.
Mm. Wow, that sounds fantastic. And I'm sure you're going to tell us a few of those things in a little while.
Sure.
So that was the catalyst for your first book, you said. And did that go instantly as a bestseller, Paul, or was that a stepping stone towards it?
It did. And it hit number one in all three categories on Amazon in the first day. And I just told my publisher, I said, let's do some things to really heighten this. And my expertise is to make things to really capture people's attention that are non like digital. It's more traditional. And so I took a press release and actually pushed that online to groups that I'm in, LinkedIn and Facebook and some different groups to 6.5 million of the people that I connect with. And after the launch week, my publisher came back and said, Paul, your book had unheard of results. And I said, is that good? And he said, yeah, it is. And it had hit number one in four countries, which was England, Germany, Australia, and United States. And it also hit number one in 10 categories and was top 10 in 22 categories. So it had a wide appeal. But my other two books have both hit number one. But the real reason is that there's so many stories that talk about principles. And when you've gone through something tough and come out the other side, and people recognize that just 4 years ago, when I was struggling to finish my book, and I'd launched my digital career in California and fell flat on my face. It got to the point where the lowest point in my life was not too much longer after that experience in the Holy Lands. And I found that everything I was trying to do was failing and that all the success I had before wasn't working. And it ended up that I had $115 to my name. And I ended up going to a monastery for 2 years and was praying and thinking that maybe my lot in life is just to pray and end out my years on praise and worship to God Almighty. But I got pretty bored in the monastery and it was super quiet. It's an incredible thing to achieve a stillness in your mind. And when you do that, it's like the voice of God becomes very clear. It did for me, or however you that clarity or that really true understanding where you start to put knowledge together or things just fit together. And there's all
Mm.
these different things, but I just felt like there was more to life and I wanted to contribute. And so I ended up leaving and I didn't have much money at all. And so I ended up sleeping in an abandoned church. This was just 4 years ago. And I was reading these phenomenal books that has stood for centuries that have great messages in them, like Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning and Dale Carnegie and Napoleon Hill and some of these great writers. And I just envisioned being able to write like that and be able to communicate that because with that search for purpose and meaning, what came out of it is I just decided to take action. And I think that's a real key because when you decide to act and then you take action, is then there's things that happen in your life. And I was sharing with you before we started today is that I had a vision. And to me, to become an entrepreneur is you have to be a person of vision and you have to decide to lead. Because if you're constantly following somebody else, then you'll never come to the point where you truly lead people because people are looking for leaders.
Sure,
And so,
absolutely.
yeah, with all of this that happened is I made some decisions and I had this vision of me helping people to level up their authority and to really launch their authority by doing a VIP weekend where you're picked up by a helicopter and flown to a really beautiful location and you have an overnight kind of event where we talk about how to become a best-selling author. I invite you to come on and write a book with me, which is called an anthology book, which I've published two other books like that. And then the next day we fly on a Lear jet and to an exotic location that's beautiful, like in the Keys or somewhere in the Caribbean. And we finish out the weekend by doing a mastery class on how to create compelling content, how to really come to the point where you can be persuasive, but from the standpoint where it resonates with people so much that they just want to be a part of what you're doing, kind of like creating a movement. And
Okay, I'm
so
going to
here
stop
about
you there, Paul, because I want to rewind because I can see that you've got that huge vision, and that's fantastic. I want to rewind to the part of your story. You were inspired by reading these books. You had already had your success with one of your books. That was the Yellow Page, The Death of a Yellow Page Salesperson.
not
Right?
yet.
So then that was the monastery, and then it was the abandoned church. How did you get out of that? You didn't just read the books. Tell me a bit more about that transition, because a lot of people maybe listening are feeling like they're at their lowest point in their life. And when somebody's at that point, they need something to grasp hold of. And your story could be the story that turns them around. So give us a bit more detail about that. And then what you suggest maybe some steps are for somebody who's in that place.
Okay. So to kind of rewind, as you say, is once I came out of the monastery and I was in this church, abandoned church, and I did have permission to be there, but yeah, I just didn't know what to do with my life. So I was reading these books and I was writing my own memoir. But the thing that happened, and this is kind of my signature message that I deliver to people, and that is making a decision to dare to act. And DARE is actually an acronym of DARE, where you decide, you act, you make a conscious decision to receive, and then you simply enjoy and, as I call it, evangelize or share it. And so it's a simple process. So what I did is I decided I needed to support myself until my retirement kicks in, which is a couple of years away. So I thought I'll get a job at Home Depot. And so I was selling hardware and then was doing so well with that that they put me in charge of sales for the store and flooring. And then COVID hit, and I ended up becoming the closer for all Home Depot stores, 2,800 stores throughout all of America. And that was good until I retired, which was for a couple of years. But I had a hard time finishing my book, and I hadn't published a book yet. I sat on my own memoir for 2 years. In fact, it was a year after I quit Home Depot, after I retired. It was so hard for me to put that out there because I thought, what are people going to think? I mean, this is the lowest point in my life. If you've ever gone through something where you don't know what's on the other side or how to get to the other side, you just have this sense of loss and you're discouraged and you've kind of lost hope. You kind of have the promise that things are going to get better. And you think it can't get any darker than this. And sometimes I felt that way, or maybe you have.
Yeah, I think a lot of
But
people will
but
have done
when
as
you
well.
but when you decide, and that's a conscious thing you have to do, is if you have a vision of where you want to go, and to me, your desires in your heart is really your vision. And so how big of a dream do you have? What is it that you really want to do with people? And do you just want to kind of exist in life, or do you really want to do something that could be remembered for generations? I had a lot of stories and I helped a lot of people in the past, but I needed to help myself first. And if you saw the pictures of me 4 years ago, they're completely different than what I am now. But there's one thing that helped me is I met somebody that has become my wife, and she challenged me when she first met me because she thought I was a little boring. Because coming out of the monastery, I just, we didn't have any reactions. We weren't enthusiastic. We were just like so suppressed. And to me, religion is like living in a box. And so that's fine for some people. But I just wanted to be free and I wanted to live life. I just wanted to give in a way that people respond.
And so from there, so after the Home Depot experience, then you were writing your book. Your wife then challenged you. to
Mhm.
write more books, to get the memoirs out there? What was her challenge to you?
Her challenge, it's interesting because we met each other online and she's been blind since birth. When I actually was talking to her on the phone, she messaged me and says, "We need to talk." And I was like, okay. And so I had the paid version of plentyoffish.com, which is on my phone. And so I just hit call and it doesn't reveal my phone number. And so we're talking within a minute of her posting that message. And she thought, oh my gosh, this guy is really fast. Now, granted, I was only 6 weeks out of the monastery, so I was ready for a relationship, but not in that sense. I just was looking for companionship because I
Yeah.
was already 60 or so. But I was talking to her and I noticed that every one of her pictures, her eyes were closed. And I was like, huh. And then I saw her dog, which had like the muzzle around. And then it started really to dawn on me that this gal is different.
Yeah.
And then I saw her headline and it said, "Ever had a blind date? Try me." And
Oh,
so I put together that there was something really special about her.
yeah.
And I just felt like there was a whisper that said to me, if you pursue her, I'll show you a life you've never seen. And so after going out with her several times, she challenged me and how do you feel about the Holy Spirit? I said, well, I've gone to church all my life and my dad is a pastor. And she goes, I know all that. But how do you feel? How is your relationship with the Holy Spirit? And how does the Holy Spirit work in your life? And so it was something that was really kind of a deeper level that I'd ever gone. And so I recognized that she had something that I really needed. That was the ability to be able to not just go surface level, but to go to the point where you have that inspiration, that guidance, and that wisdom that comes from, the all knowing, seeing truth, which is, all we recognize as not all of us, but a lot of us recognize as God Almighty. And so that was the pivotal point that changed everything for me. And it turned my marketing book into an inspiration book. And I recognized that there's a relationship that can be developed that is truly an inspirational, divine moment in our lives.
Fantastic. And so you did the D of the dare and you put that book out, you finished it, you completed it, you acted upon
I
it.
did.
Yeah. And so coming through that and coming out of that and that first book, and you've done how many more? Three afterwards? Three since then?
I've done a total of three that I've published. All have become number one international bestsellers. And my memoir actually became award winning. I was a top finalist for the World Book Awards. And my sisters published 10 books. But the thing that I saw is that I really wanted to help people to be able to kind of master business online because I find that being 60 years old, that tech is super challenging and that there's a lot of things that you need to master to be able to help people on a really large platform. So, in my contribution of this book up here called The Author Code, my contribution in there was a chapter called Skyrocket to Success. And what I talk about is one thing to be an author, it's another to become a best selling author because you have that level of authority and the average number of books sold is like 100, well, about 250 actually in a lifetime of an author's, for that life of that book. But once you have that best-selling book, if you have like a speaking platform, to me the best speaking platforms are, sure, a stage, a TED Talk would be great, but I was going online like twice a day on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, all these. And I saw my following jump 15 times from like 2,000 to 30,000. When you have people that are wanting that say, Paul, we love your stuff, and one gal said, Paul, your life is so palpable. And I had to look it up to make sure I understood that. But when you've arrived at a place that people can see and sense that there's something happening and you're helping people, That can make all the difference in the world.
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely. And that's when they're reaching out to you to get the help that they need because they can know that you've been on that path already. You've walked that path.
Right.
They're with the pebbles, with the stones, with the puddles, with the ups and the downs. And yeah, that's you being vulnerable and showing all of that, especially in a book, because you don't know where that's going, who's going to see that. But that vulnerability comes back to you thousands of times. Look at all of the followers that you've got, Paul. That's awesome. Now, I know at the beginning we were also speaking about rest.
Mhm.
And I find it's really important because rest is definitely part of work. And a lot of people, when they're trying to reach that peak, they're trying to get to that top level, are not resting because they haven't got the time to rest. They've got to keep going. But it's so important. So I know that's something that you wanted to pick up on and that rest side. So talk about that with us, Paul.
There's a lot of people think of rest as I need to get better sleep, or I need to take more time for myself, or, I need to minimize the stress in my life. But I'll tell you, if you're doing something that you truly is a passion of yours and you feel called to do, and that you feel like you're leading somebody in not just a money making venture, but something that is truly going to change lives, that to me is so purposeful. But when that happens, is you can do it with no stress. I mean, so many people have commented to me and they say, Paul, you're just so relaxed in the way that you approach people. And you do have to kind of lean out a little bit and you have to disconnect a little bit about, looking for results all the time.
Mhm.
But when you make it about truly enjoying just the journey, and not focusing just on the end results and the fact that you signed up so many people for your masterclass or that you've made $1 million or whatever. But when you sense that message I received yesterday of somebody said, Paul, your book changed my life. And it's so fulfilling. So got a message inside of you and that you've desired to be able to help people, or maybe you've seen yourself speaking on stage, then this is the perfect opportunity to take action and decide to act, to receive, and then enjoy it.
Very, very true. Very true. And note, I think a lot of people have messages inside them, but they're afraid that either nobody's going to want to listen or they're just afraid to share that message. But if you have the right person to help coach you along, the right support, then they can bring that message out of you. And the story that most needs to be told will come up at some point. And that's when lives get changed, truly get changed. So then the resting side, because we were talking about the rest side, Paul, what would you say on that side of things? When how you spoke about, yeah, some people feel rest is sleeping or it's taking time for themselves, which it is,
Right.
not just keep on working, 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 because rest recharges your batteries, even if you love
Mm-hmm.
what you do, right? So having that rest is really important. So is there anything else
It
you would
is.
like to share? I think you were going to share another story as well with us
Mm-hmm.
before we end
You
up.
know, I think that the biggest thing about rest is knowing how you can do things that are truly stress free and recognizing what adds stress and what is truly enjoyable to do. If you find that you're having to do something that you're really straining and that is truly stressful, I'll remind you that those are truly the most pivotal moments and where your mind actually expands the most. And when you challenge yourself to do that, those are the most impactful and growthful experiences. So I like to do those first in the morning.
Mm,
The most challenging thing, and I like to do at least one thing that's the most challenging thing. The hardest thing is do that. I start like at 10 o'clock. I have my morning routine where I get up 6 to 7 o'clock in the morning and I do like 2 or 3 hours of just, time that, to prepare, get quiet, listen, pray, read. And then at 10 o'clock, that's when I really am all in on to get this thing done by 11 or 12.
Mm.
And, I also like to have like office hours to where, and doing it in the home is a little bit more challenging. And when we travel and do book tours and speaking tours, it's a little more challenging. But the thing is, you have to protect your time. And then you also have to have time to enjoy and do things that are fun and exciting. And I love to travel. And my wife loves to do fun things. And so for some of our trips, we go on zip lines and we go in little motorboats. And I try to make her dizzy going in circles and, all different things. We've gone flying and, some different things. And earlier, I was talking about when you have a vision of things, that certain things are attracted. And some people call it manifesting, which I think is an interesting terminology. We live in a spiritual world that really governs the physical. So when you have something in your mind, when you have a vision board or something that truly is the desires of your heart, then when you put focus and real, attention to it and awareness to it, is things start to happen. I was telling earlier that I had this vision to take people to an island in a Learjet. Well, a couple of weeks ago, I had requested somebody to come onto my podcast, and I have the podcast skyrocket to success.com. That's either the number two or TO. But I saw a reel of his, and he's about my age in his 60s. And he just looked like he's fun and engaging. And I could tell he was an entrepreneur. So I thought I can invite him on. I just sent him a message and say, I'd love to have you on my podcast and get to know you better. And so when I invited him, I said, is it okay if we talk about some of these things? And he goes, sure. And he goes, that's, what I do. So he was talking about that and told the story. And then I told him about this vision I had, of being able to help people where we fly into, because he had mentioned he was into aviation.
Oh.
And I showed him this picture that I had that I printed out right before the first of the year that has the interior of a Learjet. And he goes, that's a Gulfstream. He goes, I have a jet just like that. And what I do is I fly people in to destination resorts and we spend like a weekend and I charge X amount. And I had just put a post in this inner circle that I'm a part of what my vision was and the dollar amount. And it was exactly what he does.
Wow, that is incredible. You just drew it to you. Wow.
Well,
I
I
love
think it
that.
was providential in that there was an alignment and purpose
Yeah.
and where, we both attracted each other. And
Yeah.
so,
And also, like you said, you took action. You didn't just think, oh, he'd be cool to interview. You actually went, I'd love you to be on my podcast, right?
right. And so, where did that inspiration come from?
Mm, yeah.
But
Inside.
things don't happen if we don't take action.
Yeah. Fantastic. Paul, you're amazing. It's been wonderful being able to speak with you and interview you and find out your insights and your fantastic story. And I'm sure a lot of people have been inspired to do more, to take that dream out of their back pocket and actually put it to work, or even just to start to dream again, because I think a lot of people have lost that. They're struggling too much and they really want to make a difference. And like you say, if you've got something you want to say, if you've got a message that you want to get out there, then get it out there. Any closing words from you, Paul, before we finish?
So I'd just like to say, Lucy, it's been a pleasure to get to know you better. And I've actually personally met you. We did an event together in Houston where we both spoke on stage. And, you have such an ability to help people in a way that kind of is different than a lot of people because you get into the real specifics and not generalities, but the simple things that truly will make a difference in people's lives, like talking about how to get quiet or how to find rest or how to find mastery on some specific things, whether it's mindset or whether it's leadership principles or whatever. But I just really sense that, there's a lot of people that you're going to help. And I just think it's a really, truly a gift to be able to interact with you and be a part of your whole movement.
Well, thank you so much. And I know that you inspire a lot of people, Paul. And if somebody wants to get in contact with you, there's going to be some more information about how you can get in contact with Paul and his books in the description box below. So thank you, Paul, for your words and for sharing all of that with us. There's going to be another video coming up on screen. So I'm going to see you over there. Have an awesome day and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.